In a competitive market, making your offer stand apart can mean the difference between getting the home of your dreams or settling for something you're not thrilled about. With so many buyers often competing for the same home, how can you make your offer stand out and gain a competitive edge? There are several ways, but here are the top 8 that would give you an unfair advantage. Advantage 1. Conditional underwriting loan approval versus pre-approval. The majority of buyers make offers on homes with a pre-approval letter that was signed by a licensed loan officer. Sure, yes, the loan officer would have reviewed the loan application, credit report, debts, and assets, and run the file through the automated underwriting system. And then, of course, when the buyer's offer gets accepted, the loan officer submits the entire file for formal underwriting loan approval. Real estate agents representing sellers know all too well that things can change when the file is in underwriting. And if the loan officer didn't catch something and it's called out during the scrutiny of the underwriter, the deal could go sideways. For this reason, any buyer who has had their file fully underwritten resulting in a conditional loan approval before making an offer has a leg up on their competition. Why? Because they can show the seller that there are only a few minor items to be cleared and closing could happen very quickly. In fact, if credit, income, and assets have been fully underwritten and the veteran certificate of eligibility has been obtained, once the offer is accepted and loan disclosures are signed, only a handful of items need to be provided to finish up the file. These are the appraisal, title report, escrow paperwork, and homeowner's insurance. Advantage 2. Be flexible with both closing and occupancy dates. Being flexible with a closing date can help your offer stand out. This shows the seller that you are willing to work with their timeline and can help make the transaction smoother. For some sellers, it's important to close quickly because the next chapter in their lives involves being somewhere else quickly. This could mean a job relocation that requires starting the new job right away. VA loans are regularly closed in 2 weeks or less, although 21 and 30 days seems far more common. It's that much more important, as we said earlier, for you to have all your pertinent documents ready and up to date with your lender so you know you can jump on an opportunity quickly. A quick closing isn't always a priority for sellers. Some may prefer staying in their home post-closing to prepare for their next move, such as waiting for a new house to be built. Offering a post-closing rent-back arrangement could make your offer more appealing. VA loans usually require occupancy within 60 days, but exceptions exist as we discuss in another video. To make their offer stand out, some buyers really up the ante by letting the seller stay rent-free until the new mortgage payments start, which could be feasible because the new VA loans payments would typically begin 30 days or more after closing. Say you closed on March 20th. Your first mortgage payment will be until May 1st. Could you perhaps let the seller stay until right before May 1st, seeing you're not making an out-of-pocket housing payment on the home until then? As long as this doesn't create a financial burden on you, it may be a unique way to make your offer that much more attractive to a seller that's reviewing multiple offers. Advantage 3. Offer to remove contingencies sooner. Although there can be a handful of contingencies in a real estate transaction, there are 3 main contingencies: appraisal, home inspection, and loan approval. Contingencies are crossroads or deadline milestones during the timeline of the escrow process at which both parties must agree to proceed towards closing or not. If you and your lender can be prepared to move swiftly, you could potentially lower the time frames for some or all of these contingencies, which would give the seller the much sought-out assurance they need that the deal will actually close. The key to a faster VA appraisal process is to make sure your lender orders the VA appraisal almost immediately upon opening escrow. Appraisals cannot be ordered without the lender having your certificate of eligibility and a copy of all pages of the purchase agreement, along with any addendums and counteroffers. To achieve loan approval faster and to feel confident about removing the loan contingency, keep all your documents ready and up to date for your lender. Instead of waiting for your lender to request updated documents every so often, especially if it's been months since your pre-approval, proactively send updated pay stubs and bank statements during your house hunting. This way, you'll be prepared to move forward quickly when you find the right home, without the rush to update your documents. Home inspections being ordered right away puts the seller at ease. So in your agent's initial communication with the seller's agent, they can make it known that you've tentatively scheduled with a home inspector in anticipation of offer acceptance. This exudes confidence, and confidence is subliminally persuasive. Feel free to let them know that you've lined up maybe 2 or 3 inspectors to make sure at least one of them is available at a date and time that's ideal for the seller. Showing that you've done your homework in this manner signals to the seller that you are more prepared than other buyers, ready to take action the moment the offer is accepted. Advantage 4. Alert the seller's agent of the advantages of VA financing. Unfortunately, even to this day, many real estate agents carry a grudge against VA lending because of antiquated and outdated misconceptions they have. Those come about from challenges the VA loan program had over 20 years ago. And remember, the real estate agent exerts a strong influence on their sellers, whose favorable decision you're seeking to win. So it's important that your lender and your real estate agent deliver a preemptive strike against these misconceptions. How? By taking the initiative to proactively spotlight the advantages of the VA home loan program via email and by phone if necessary. You'd be surprised to see how many real estate agents have no idea that the vast majority of VA appraisals come in at or above the value that supports the purchase price, or that VA offers no less than 3 opportunities to contest a lowball appraisal value and has historically boasted the lowest loan denial rates compared to conventional and FHA loans. Advantage 5. Offer a larger earnest money deposit. An earnest money deposit in a real estate deal is a sum of money a buyer pays to demonstrate their seriousness about purchasing a home. It's essentially a good faith deposit that's typically held in an escrow account and applied to the buyer's down payment or closing costs once the sale is finalized. If the deal goes through, the earnest money is credited toward the purchase. If the deal falls through due to contingencies in the contract, the buyer may get their deposit back. The amount of the earnest deposit or good faith deposit, as it's commonly known, is not set by law and is always negotiable. Most home buyers tend to want to offer the lowest they can get away with. It's human nature. Therefore, surprising the seller with a larger than usual earnest deposit signals to the seller that you are a strong, serious, and willing buyer. Since there is no down payment required on a VA loan when you have full entitlement available, your earnest money will most likely go entirely towards closing costs, and therefore VA guidelines allow those funds to be borrowed. If you can get your hands on a larger sum of money than the typical 1% or so the seller might expect, you may be signaling to the seller that you really mean business and ought to be put to the front of the line. Advantage 6. Offer more than asking price. In a buyer's market where buyers have the upper hand and there are plenty of homes for sale, this might not be a smart move. However, if you are in a market where you're competing with many other buyers, including those willing to pay cash for the home, this tactic may not be as costly as you might think. Paying more than asking price may seem outrageous to some veterans, but when you consider the wasteful ongoing cost of continuing to rent, could it make sense to add a few $1,000s to the purchase price to forego paying many more months of rent? Some experts look at it like this: you're going to spend the money anyway. In other words, if your offer doesn't get accepted, you're going to pay the next month's rent and maybe a few more after that. So why not pay a little more on an asset you will own so it can begin to appreciate in value right away, rather than keep throwing money at a housing expense that brings you no financial gain? Naturally, if you do take this approach, be sure to set maximums on what you're willing to bring over and above the appraised value. We have an informative video on the subject in this series. Keep in mind that the seller will often ask for proof that you do in fact have the funds available to pay more, if your offer gets accepted. It's common practice to provide proof of funds using a bank statement or other account statement with sensitive account number details redacted. Instead of offering a higher price right off the bat, some veterans add an escalation clause to their offers. This clause lets the buyer automatically increase their offer by set amounts to surpass other bids, up to a certain limit. It's designed to keep the offer competitive without starting at the maximum bid. For instance, you might tell the seller you'll outbid any higher offer by $500, up to a maximum offer of $350,000. Advantage 7. Don't ask for seller contribution towards closing costs. In a market with high demand for a property, the seller's paying very close attention to their net bottom line. With closing costs typically being about 3% of a home sale price, requesting a seller to reduce their proceeds by $12,000 on a $400,000 home can jeopardize your offer, especially if competing buyers aren't asking for such concessions. It's beneficial for veterans to explore alternative methods for handling their closing costs whenever possible. VA allows you to borrow unsecured funds through a personal loan or even credit cards as long as the resulting monthly payments are counted in your debt-to-income ratio and residual income calculation. How else can your closing costs be covered? If you're not willing or able to come up with your own funds, and if a gift from those close to you is not an option either, you could discuss with your lender the viability of getting some rebate from the lender, known as lender credit, tied to above-market interest rates. As long as the monthly mortgage payment is affordable, this is a smart way to bridge the closing cost gap as opposed to risking the seller choosing someone else. Naturally, if you've exhausted all other options and getting closing costs paid by the seller is the only way to make the numbers work, then you may need to keep looking for that right home where the seller is flexible. And there's nothing wrong with that. Advantage 8. High-quality communication before and when the offer is made. As we said earlier, the real estate agent representing the seller has a tremendous influence on how your offer is treated when the seller is choosing the winning buyer. So, in that agent's mind, the way you and your agent communicate before an escrow is opened is an undeniable clue, a prelude, as to how things will go during the transaction. If your agent is difficult to reach, slow to respond, or doesn't provide details in a timely manner, the seller's agent is already forming an opinion in his or her mind as to how cumbersome an escrow will be where you're the buyer. So, turn the tables and be borderline over-communicating, but not too pesky. A good buyer's agent, when preparing your offer, may text the seller's agent saying, "I'm preparing the offer now." A simple but very meaningful communication. Maybe this will be followed by, "My buyers are e-signing the offer when they get home from work around 7 p.m., so I should have it to you tonight by 8 p.m. And they've tentatively engaged 3 home inspectors so we can get one out to the home quickly once offer is accepted." This signals to the seller's agent the message, "This agent likes to keep me informed with live status updates." Your agent may also phone call the seller's agent and find out what's most important to the seller. Closing quickly isn't always the seller's priority. Admittedly, it's not always possible to get the seller's agent to divulge anything about the seller's situation or their motivation, but it's always worth a try. If your agent learns the seller is buying a new home nearby, suggesting you use the same closing attorney they prefer could make your offer look more appealing. Thoughtful gestures beyond the offer price, like this, can significantly influence the seller's decision in your favor. Communication is key. Offers that are sloppy in how they're written can be a kiss of death when the agent on the other side is looking for a warm and fuzzy feeling about working with you and your agent. So it's important that your agent be diligent with attention to detail. Your loan officer should proactively call and/or text the seller's agent, letting them know they have a complete loan package on you, have secured your certificate of eligibility and automated approval, and are ready to order appraisal quickly, even on day 1. Preparedness is interpreted as competence. Your loan officer or the lender they work for having experience with VA loans would be an important thing to convey to the agent.